something your culture glorifies that actually traumatized you? Girls in my community had their vocal cords partially severed at 13 to ensure our voices remained pleasingly soft for our future husbands. The procedure happened in this little straw hut with tools that were never cleaned and was carried out with no anesthetic. My appointment was scheduled 2 weeks after my 14th birthday, and I knew what I was in for after I watched my older sister go through what she did. My parents threw her a celebration dinner the night she had her throat cut. She sat at the table trying to thank them, but only air came out. Blood had soaked through the white gauze wrapped around her throat and dripped onto her dinner plate while she struggled to swallow soup. When I asked, did it hurt? Her face went pale and she tried to scream while nodding, but no sound came out, just this horrible wheezing sound as her body shook. 3 weeks after her surgery, she woke up choking on her own blood. The poorly done paper stitches had torn in her sleep. She tried to scream for help, but only gurgled and aspirated more blood into her lungs. I found her turning blue on her bedroom floor, clawing at her throat. My parents drove her to the same hut she had her procedure, where she had to write "can't breathe" over and over. The doctor finally restitched her throat, during which my sister kept going red and crying from the pain, and she slept sitting up for months afterward, terrified of drowning in her own blood again. The worst part was when 3 classmates cornered her in the equipment room knowing she couldn't scream. She came out 20 minutes later with bruises and torn clothes, but no one believed her frantic written account, not even our parents. She ended up taking her own life 8 months after her procedure. She left a note saying she felt like she was buried alive in her own body. At the funeral, my mother gave this speech about how my sister was too sensitive and should have embraced her feminine silence like the other girls. All the cut women stood there nodding in agreement, their husbands' hands on their shoulders like they were holding down ghosts. I stood in the back row wondering when my own appointment would be. And now, it was here. 1 week before it happened, we were having a family BBQ when I spotted my only potential escape, Rashad. He was back from college and the son of a good family friend. He was 19, but had been eyeing me ever since I started maturing. I waited until he'd had 3 beers, then went up to him and started brushing his arm and talking to him like he was the man of my dreams. We ended up leaving for his place where we slept together. It was my first time, far from magical like I thought it would be. I felt disgusting and humiliated afterwards, but it had to be done. 2 days later, I took a pregnancy test and showed it to my mother. Rashad had worn a rubber, but the 2 lines still showed up because I'd stolen the test from one of the girls in school who used the same trick. Once my mother saw that I was pregnant, her face lit up. She called an emergency family meeting that night where everyone agreed Rashad, who was too hammered to remember he wore a rubber, would be an amazing father and that my vocal surgery would have to wait until after the baby. I remember celebrating on the inside, my plan was working, and this was only phase 1. You see, my fake morning sickness gave me freedom to leave the house for prenatal appointments that were really meetings with my cut classmates. I recorded testimonies on my phone and hid them in deep folders. The cut girls wrote what they wished they could say, while uncut girls described waiting for their turn. I knew I only had a few weeks before my parents would get suspicious about the baby, so I had to move fast. And that's why everything fell apart. I was careless and left the house in the evening when I knew my mother was also out somewhere. And because the universe is twisted, she caught me with the other girls. I didn't know it then, but when I came home I sure as hell found out. The first thing my dad did was pin me down onto the kitchen floor. I tried protesting and asking what was going on, and that's when my mother started pressing and stomping on my bladder until I wet myself. She used that to get the results of another pregnancy test. Of course, this one came back negative, and my parents absolutely freaked out. They sat me down on the couch, pulled out my phone, started going through it, and called Rashad's parents. I ended up bruised quite heavily, and that night there was another emergency meeting, this time about how I had deceived everyone and how poor Rashad thought he was becoming a father. They made me apologize to him. At the very end of the meeting, my dad decided he was done with me. He got Rashad and his parents out of the house before pinning me against the wall and telling me, if you want to talk to everyone so much, let's see how you talk now. With that, he pulled out his phone and called the doctor. After a long minute of silence, he said thank you and hung up. Your surgery is scheduled for tomorrow. We're doing a triple cut just for you. It hurts much worse, and you'll never talk again. Not even a whisper. So you'll have plenty of time to think about how sorry you are for this little stunt. He then dropped me to the floor and walked away. Full story on channel link below.